Okay. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the Technology Committee. It's Monday, September 27th. I'm Kevin Strobel. Scott Matt.
Kristen Thompson.
Greg Cooper. Number 9. Thank goodness we're at the technology meeting. Here's the day. And I put that down. Scott, fix thing. Let's see. Am I going to set it all? Alright. I should kill yours. Don't mind? Okay, good. Alright, let's see. Alright. Before we got into the agenda, I know we wanted to touch quickly on one thing that came out of facilities, which was a issue with TransFinder, our bus routing system, and some issues that were brought up at that meeting with syncing of information and whatnot. So we did work with Mr. Biggerstaff on that issue. Ultimately, identified that being related to more so workflows that they would like to follow as far as syncing of information goes, and they were in conflict with really how the system was set up. So really came down to excluding information. There were some private school, parochial schools that they wanted to maintain manually, so we simply had to exclude that information from the file. Once we did that, that allowed that information to be maintained manually in the system, and it did not overwrite as it was currently. And that really was any data that was manually maintained in the system. It did make sense that our system would come back and overwrite it with the nightly process, which would be the expected behavior for our K-12 kids in person. So that was a perceived error, but really it was working exactly as it was configured. We were able to just had to configure it to match up with the workflows that were occurring in that system. So once we did that, really the majority of our issues cleared up on that front.
So the beginning of next year, we won't have all the websites missing the bus routes and all the other things that went along with that.
Correct. Yeah. So now that we don't have those conflicts, and that is nice. It is a setting that sticks now in perpetuity until we adjust it again. So even as of now, those exchanges of information should be occurring at this point. Other issue really is actually just something for today, and I'll elaborate on this probably later in the week. It's just really an issue we experienced today with slow internet traffic, and it's something that we are still sort of tracing back on our end. We feel we have identified the major cause of the issue, but we're still working to identify the root cause. And essentially what we have found is the majority of our iPads updated apps today, which normally is not an eventful thing, but Apple is releasing a new version of their system, so a lot of apps are updating to get prepared for that. And what we found is a lot of heavy hitter apps updated all around the same time in about 7:30 to 8:45 range. A lot of them kicked off, and it really brought our internet connection to a halt. Essentially, that traffic could not get out, and that compounds because you have all these apps trying to update, they can't complete it, and it's a literal snowball that keeps going down through. So that is what caused the issue. Now, what we are working to determine is why did they initiate that update all at once. That is not a setting that we have configured, and it's not something we've observed previously. So that'll be our work yet over the next several days, just to determine what actually transpired there. Was it a one-time glitch? Is it a quote-unquote new feature? What actually happened there? But that disrupted us from about 7:30 to right around 1 o'clock. Just internet traffic was incredibly slow in the district until we could clear that up. So that was a fun Monday.
They had like an emergency update just recently about last week because they got hacked.
Yes. So that was.
And they since then came out with 15. If you want to be brave enough to walk off that ladder.
Correct.
But is that maybe that's why they finally just said we got to force this through because there's information bleeding?
So our system can actually take control of those updates. So we have settings, particularly for iOS 15. We delay that for 60 days just to allow for testing and whatnot. So we knew it wasn't iOS 15, which would be another substantial update. As far as 14.6 is what you're referencing.
I think it was 14.8.
Yeah.
So whatever that is, yeah.
It was not that type of update. It was actual like app update. So think about like I don't know, the calculator app on the phone. So it was that sort of thing. And in most cases, I mean, our students use a lot of apps. So that could have been 6 to 12 to more apps updating at once. So like I said, that work as far as determining what prompted that mass update, we're still trying to identify. But we felt better this afternoon at least of knowing what caused it now. Going a little bit further yet to prevent it from happening in the future is our next step. So, like I said, probably more information on that one at the end of the week when we do our normal weekly updates. But since that was noteworthy for today, I figured we'll get going on that one. So beyond that, really the main thing I wanted to talk about tonight was just elaborating on infrastructure, and that was one thing just touched on briefly at our August meeting. I wanted to start diving into it a little bit more to add a little bit more color and information to infrastructure projects for the upcoming school year. So I'm going to do that in presentation form, just to kind of run through things, and also just to give a brief rundown of where we are with infrastructure, how we got there, just very briefly. It's not quite as cool to discuss as some of the stuff we're doing in the classroom, so I find I just personally don't highlight some of the advancements that we've made, and really our infrastructure is what's allowing us to do a lot of stuff in the classroom, so it's certainly important, so I just want to touch on a couple things there. So, looking at our roadmap, what highlights have we achieved in the last several years? So, really the big overhaul to our infrastructure, which has allowed us to, the iPad one-to-one and a lot of our integrated learning started back in 2015-16, and that's when we deployed district-wide wireless access to all of our classrooms. Before that, there was office spaces, it was hallways. You certainly were not going to have a classroom set of devices in every location. Think back to the days where we had carts of laptops, or maybe just a teacher device is all we were supporting. So we're coming around our 6th year now that we actually have wireless access in all of our classrooms, and that certainly has facilitated our iPad one-to-one, our digital learning parts, all that sort of thing in our classrooms. Next thing we looked at was in 2017, and that's when we upgraded our district firewall. And that was really upgraded to accommodate the bandwidth for a lot of our cloud services. So ironically, it was upgraded to accommodate more traffic today to update our iOS apps. But that's what's allowed us to take advantage of Google Classroom for Schoology, Google Docs in itself. All of those services are hosted in the internet. They're not something that exists here in the district. So to support that additional traffic, we upgraded that firewall, and that firewall continues to be used today, and we still have about 2 more years of useful life on that front. 2018 is when we really started to look at our network and we started redesigning it. And that's when we looked at the number of wireless devices we had, and we significantly reduced the number of switches we had in the district. And we were able to do that and achieve a cost avoidance of about $200,000 had we continued down a wired device path, or keeping all of these network links active. So with the wireless upgrades that we did in 15-16, that allowed us to achieve that, and basically what that looked like is almost halving the number of network switches we had in the district. In 18, we had about 170, and today we're right at 85 in the district. And that, really, we still deliver the same level of service. It was just changing our operating model, that we were not going to energize network links that were not used, and we were certainly recognizing that wired technology was certainly diminishing as far as technology that our students were using. And then last but not least was our most recent project that we did this summer, and that was in 2021. And that was upgrading and deployed redundant internet connections. So we were able to do that. Also had a cost savings as well of about $40,000. So now we have 2 internet providers. So one of the things I loathe most is a 5-10 pound squirrel chewing on an internet line and taking us down. Now with those redundant connections, we have a little bit more protection from that sort of thing. You're going to have to go after 2 lines to take us down now rather than just one. And these are 2 separate providers, so again they follow 2 separate paths. And if hopefully one provider does an update that for some reason causes an issue, we still have a completely different provider to fall back on. So those are general highlights. Over the last about 5 years that we've done, and they really facilitate some of the growth that we'll have yet to come. So any just questions on any of the brief history?
How do you save money in getting 2 services versus 1?
So that was basically really just bidding it out on our own. So previously we were in a consortium. When we went out and bid on our own, we just were able to achieve better pricing as a district. Really, when you looked at the consortium, some of the bigger districts were lowering the cost for smaller districts because we obviously had more buying power, but that also meant that we were not necessarily getting our maximum deal for our location. That played a huge part in it for us.
Great.
Service Electric was Exeter, and Crown Castle, our other provider, right down 422. So there were some advantages that we had based on location, our size, and whatnot.
That's great.
So looking at our current environment, just a brief rundown of what is actually powering everything we're doing. So in our server farm, we basically have 4 virtual hosts. So what that means is these are 4 physical servers. They'd be 4 boxes sitting on a table. But what happens is they power what's called 4 virtual servers. So previously, that would be 40 individual boxes sitting in a network rack somewhere. Technology, this is not anything new, has come around that we can power those servers now. It's basically a server within a server. So what that does is severely cuts down on the amount of hardware we need, the amount of power, cooling, networking, that sort of thing. So we've been running virtual hosts now for about 10 years. So that's been working well for us. We'll continue down that path. We have 3 physical domain controllers. So domain controllers are what let our users log in. They're what allow you to type www.google.com and it knows to go to this location. So those are 3 servers. We split those between our high school and middle school for just protection. So if one location goes down, we can fall back to another one. And then we have 3 just what you would think of as traditional servers. So one of those is for databases. One of those is our system management for our Windows computers. And the last one is just general file storage yet for things that are too large for us to offload to the cloud. So basically about 10 physical devices that we have powering the district at this point. And that even is on the decline as well as we go to cloud-hosted environments or applications really become virtualized as well. On the security perspective, as we do more with our network cameras, that's stuff that is coming onto our network. Previously, our security cameras were coax-based, like think of the cable that runs into your own TV at home. Now they're digital, they're network-based. They can be accessed from anywhere. No longer do you need the row of TVs that, curriculum instructions in 15 minutes. No longer do you need the row of TVs to look at closed-circuit TV. Now it is an entirely digital process. And similarly, we provide support for our controlled access system, so the badges, basically. And then looking at our network, touching on that same thing, we have about 85 switches, 370 wireless access points, and we do have our redundant firewall and internet connection that we just discussed on the last slide. Rounding things out, under communications, we have about 380 phones in the district, and we do have redundant phone connections as well, following the same concept, connection at our middle school, connection at our high school. And then looking at our system resilience, we have a backup generator for our core data center, and we also use UPS units, which are basic giant batteries in our network closets. So those last 2 items are really our infrastructure projects for this year, communications and system resiliency. So on that front, basically we take a layered approach right now. So our uninterruptible power supplies are giant batteries. What happens is if the power goes out, that battery kicks in. So think of maybe you have a power bank that you carry along with you for your cell phone on trips or whatnot. Same concept. We're running off of just big batteries. So all of our network closet batteries, we get about 5 to 10 minutes of runtime out of them. It depends on the equipment load, how much equipment is on the individual UPS. And these include environmental monitors, so we can actually also see temperature and humidity. So in situations where we lose power, particularly in the spring and summer months, we can run into situations where our network closets will heat up because of lack of AC, basically. So we still have those alerts so that we know if equipment does reach a certain temperature, we want to gracefully shut it down before we get into even bigger problems of just having no power. After that, we fall back with our backup generator. So our main data center does have its own dedicated generator, basically right up in one of the courtyards here at the annex. We also have additional generator power for here at the high school in the main network closet, and it powers the office. So again, if we lose power, that keeps our main hub, so to speak, of the high school online. And similar concept at the intermediate center, where we do have all network closets on generator power in those locations.
Excuse me one second. So are you saying we have one generator at the high school that covers the first two, and the one at the AIC that covers the second, the third, or we have three total?
We have 3 total, so that's a good question. So we have one generator for basically the technology office. The other 2 are falling back on the building-wide generators that are in place. So, and actually that is the topic of discussion, really. So, looking at the project focus, relatively straightforward. Basically, we want to get the remainder of our network closets to that emergency generator power for the building. It does exist in locations. It's really just a matter of pulling the runs in for us. And largely, the reason behind that is, really when we look at back in the old days, so to speak, basically power came in, went to the school, and then split off for us to our network switches or to the desktop computers. Previously, we did not have anything that needed backup power. So as long as that power was running, our users are happy. Once that power is disrupted, though, under the old system, basically everyone is down, users are unhappy, no one can do anything. With this layered approach that we're working towards, I like to be illustrated. We have power coming in.
My phone don't work.
Yep. Still going to the school. But what we have now is that middle piece of equipment, that UPS, again, giant battery. And that is powering our equipment. So in this case, a wireless access point and a battery-powered student iPad. And as long as that's online, again, everyone's happy. With the UPS, we get a little bit more resiliency. So if that power outage does occur, yes, we lose power to the building, yes, we lose power to our network closet, but the UPS is keeping us online, and that UPS keeps our wireless access points online, it keeps our network switches online, and our wireless access points draw power from our network equipment. So they stay online, and as long as our students have their battery-powered iPads, there is no noticeable disruption to our users. It just keeps working. Internet stays up, wireless stays up, and again, as long as the device is charged, it stays up as well. However, as noted, 5 to 10 minutes of runtime, so the clock is ticking on that battery. So what we're looking to do is get that generator power there, because once that's restored to the building, we restore connection to the battery, and then we stay online really as long as the generator is running. So we are not as impacted by the power outage. So that keeps online our wireless internet, it keeps online our telephones, it keeps online our network switches. Really our only pitfall gets to more the end user and whether employee laptops are charged or the iPads are charged as well, which that's going to just continue to be the nature of the game as far as those devices are charged. So that is our primary goal, to complete that loop. So we don't just have 5 to 10 minutes of resiliency, that if we do have a substantial power outage, which unfortunately they can occur, that our operations are not as directly impacted as a result of the loss of power there. Questions on that front?
We have that generator already?
So we do have generators in each building. They power, emergency lights, I believe some refrigeration, that sort of thing. So what we're looking at is basically wire pools to our locations and to verify loads to make sure that the generators are sized appropriately. Depending on findings there, then we would adjust accordingly we can certainly identify priority of equipment that should remain online versus lesser needs.
I'm sorry, did I hear you correctly that you said that the current plan is at each of the buildings to check to make sure that the load for the closets to be not pushing beyond the limits of the generators we already have that run other things in each of the 4 buildings?
Yep, that's correct.
That evaluation happened yet?
So that would be this project that we'll start planning for. That has not occurred yet. That will be this project is
Do you
identifying.
know what the current generators are? Do they all run on diesel? Do they all run on gas?
I believe the majority of them are natural gas.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions on that? So that's project number 1. The other project for the upcoming year will be our communication system. So our phone system has reached 10 years, which is the expected life out of it. And we have about 2/3 of our phones have reached end of support. And differentiate that from last time from end of life. So that means they no longer are supported, but however, they haven't turned them off on us or anything like that. We still have some time on that front. However, phone system obviously key, so we want to be out in front of that. So, looking at our current system, on the phone side, we have a Shoretel Voiceover IP system. So what that means is it works over our network, basically. It's not like an analog phone line that you may have at home. We can plug it into a network jack, and it works off of our network rather than the old dedicated phone systems. We have about 380 of those phones in the district. And we do have soft phone access. So that means a phone that can run on your laptop. So that became very important over the last year as we look at flexible instruction days, obviously our shutdown in the spring. And that we have licensed for office employees. So that's what allowed people to be able to make and answer phone calls and make it appear as though it was coming from the district during those days. And this phone system is currently hosted on premises. So that is something that is up in our office, is not cloud hosted. Other piece that comprises our communication is obviously video conferencing, again, a new entrance over the last year. So currently we do have our district Zoom subscription for faculty and students. It is heavily used. As of today, we have approximately 4,900 meetings hosted this year so far, and that number will obviously continue to grow as the year progresses. And the last piece of it is something that is really, again, really taken hold over the last year in other industries, not necessarily in education quite yet, and that would be messaging. So messaging right now for us is primarily via email. However, with the advent of things such as Microsoft Teams, Slack, WebEx, we're seeing instant messaging as a form of communication for more departmental collaboration and that sort of thing. So we do have some use of it, primarily in my office, and that would be via Slack for alerting, for conversations in that nature. But again, we're seeing that start to emerge in education as well to facilitate student projects and that sort of thing in managed ways. So when we look at basically project focus on this front, requirements. It must remain a voice over IP system. We want to have that soft phone access to continue to accommodate obviously our flexible instructional days. We'd like to see it be cloud hosted. So this is really our last vulnerable system, I would say, that's in-house for various attacks, ransomware, that sort of thing. So we've been progressively moving things to a cloud-hosted solution. This is our last major system on that front. We wanted to support E911, so that's a recent thing coming out from the FCC, which helps identify the caller's location, that sort of thing, within school buildings. So we do have some level of support for it, but not a full implementation in our current system. So that would be another focus for us to fully support that across our district. And the other big thing is basically something called a unified communication. So what that is all these systems actually that I just mentioned, as far as WebEx, even Teams, Zoom has it, they're unified apps. So phone, video conferencing, messaging, voicemail, all of it falls under one app rather than 3 separate apps that we're maintaining, 3 separate user experiences. It's all one unified thing for our users to use and to know rather than different platforms. So in terms of Daniel Boone, basically what that would do is we have our 3 main platforms, Zoom and Shoretel for the phones, and if we were to expand more with messaging, we'll say Slack. We put them in a funnel, and basically, rather than 3 separate platforms, throw them in, it comes out as one app. So our users will be able to maintain a single user account and seamlessly switch between either video conferencing, phone, for our faculty members, on snow days and whatnot, they still have access to voicemail, to that sort of thing, from one central location. So that is, the direction, really, communications are going in the industry. So any potential upgrades or replacements we look at, we would set that same marker as well, that they must achieve that, so that we can follow certainly industry trends and expectations over the next 10 years on that front. Again, this project, we're beginning the research phase, we're beginning to engage vendors as well. So really sharing goals of it, and then we will ultimately bring back what our findings are from various vendors as well. So questions as we're marching down that path. All right. With 1 minute to spare, that's it as far as I have for presentation. So I just wanted to note 2 other things as far as projects go. Frontline Central, we are preparing that rollout for our employees, so that's our digital forms. So we're expecting that coming here in October. And on the integrated learning front with Blackboard, most recently had in-service on September 20th. And that was what we'll call the how-to training, as far as pointing and clicking, learning the various controls of the actual product itself. So that occurred the morning of September 20th, so now we are addressing any questions that have come from that. And now, at this point, we'll be able to start diving pretty heavily into the product with the actual setup now. So that session was focused less on instruction and more technical on just, press this to complete this task, press this to add this material. So that was an exciting milestone to complete on that front. Questions on either of those 2 things? Questions in general? All right.
Nice job. And that concludes our technology meeting, September 27th.